Bloomberg Audio Studios.
Podcasts, radio, news.
Across this nation on your commute this morning, the one everyone in transportation is watching, no, Paul, it's not the build out in Newark.
I know.
Or what they're doing with JFK Terminal 1. Janno Lieber joins us today, running the MTA off of this congestion tax in New York, and we're thrilled that Bloomberg Surveillance will bring him to you for the entire rest of this hour. An incredibly busy day, important Monday for you. I've got one question which Kriti Gupta in London actually brought up, because I know Paul's fired up here with a bunch of questions as well. Part of the bargain in Stockholm is they have a world-class taxi service. Part of the bargain in London is they have a world-class taxi service. I'm in taxis constantly here that are third world. How does this congestion tax get us, as Kriti Gupta mentioned, to a better taxi experience?
Well, I think, Tom, thanks for having me. I think that the taxis in New York are dominated, as we all know, by Uber and Lyft, and they actually are looking forward to having clearer
But I'm going to interrupt here. You're
Yeah.
telling the poor people of New York City to take an Uber?
Yeah, you know what? Right now, the cost difference between Uber and taxis is not all that great. I'm not in the taxi business, so I'm trying to answer your question. But the point is, with less congestion on the roads, you're going to have the taxi industry, I think, is going to do better. I mean, people will be able to move more quickly, pick up more rides, and for what is actually 75 cents per ride, when the average ride of a taxi ride now in New York is like $25. So 75 cents a ride, and they're going to be able to move much more quickly, take more rides. I think it's going to be good for the industry.
Part of the outcome that you guys are hoping for, that we're all hoping for as a city, is reduce traffic, reduce congestion within the city. When will we know if that's actually happening?
It's a good question. It's going to take a while to take effect. New Yorkers adjust, and they are resilient, but it's going to take a little while. So we're going to be watching it very closely, day by day, week by week. I don't expect to see some dramatic change on the first or the second day. Over time, we're expecting a 10 to 20% reduction in traffic. That's what we're shooting for. But Paul, the big issue here is New York is leading. New York is, and I'm thinking, I know you're an international outfit. New York is becoming a 21st century city. We just did, 2 train terminals in the last couple of years. LaGuardia Airport, a total rebuild. It's #1 in the country. JFK is getting rebuilt. I know your Newark Airport is getting investment. This is about being a 21st century city where we don't spend all our time stuck in traffic. The business community has always supported congestion pricing under Mike Bloomberg's lead, in part because congestion and time spent in traffic is a tax on our economy.
A lot of folks view this congestion pricing as simply a tax on consumers. Your budget is $19 billion, I believe, at the MTA for 2024. You need more money? That's what a lot of folks are saying.
Listen, this is, as you said, this is 90% of the people who come to the central business district take transit. We're carrying 6 to 7 million people a day on mass transit. So, we have to pay a lot of people, and 80% of our costs is wages and pensions and benefits. No question, we have to pay a lot of people to deliver that service. But the bottom line is congestion pricing is about the benefits. It's about not just money for the MTA, but about lower traffic, cleaner air, safer streets, and a more functioning economy. That's the goal. That's why London did it, and that's why we're following.
I was in Paris last week, and all I can say is what a difference in congestion. It was just beyond pleasant. When are we going to see results? Are we talking Tuesday? Or are we talking 2027?
Listen, I don't want to sit here and tell you I have a crystal ball. The bottom line is adjustments are going to be made. It's going to definitely take place over time.
Right.
Let's watch it together. There's going to be total transparency on the MTA side. We're going to have a dashboard out for everybody to look at how many cars came in as compared to before the system went in, and how many of them are chargeable, and we're going to be monitoring it closely.
Number one question I get is what happens, folks, for those of you across the nation and worldwide, the outer edge of Manhattan, north-south, is the FDR and the West Side Highway. What happens to those two important thoroughfares where I believe there's no congestion tax?
Yeah, well, the idea is that these so-called excluded roadways that are on the edge of Manhattan, that people should be able to use them to get around the congestion zone. Listen, we have to. We always talk about drivers like they're the dominant reality. I know you guys take transit. 90% of people who come to the Central Business District take transit. There are only 130,000 people coming to the CBD who drive their personal cars as opposed to 1.5 million jobs. So I don't think that we're going to have some catastrophic traffic impact because a portion of those people do elect to take transit or that people are avoiding the charge. I think we're going to see it all get baked in over time, but we're going to watch it closely and we're going to talk to you about it.
We have a new president coming in a couple weeks.
Here you go.
Really
You're going tunnel, right?
Exactly. No, just what do you think President-elect Trump will do, if anything, about this plan?
I don't know. We got sued in every court from east of the Mississippi.
I was going to say, is there anyone who hasn't sued you?
Yeah, but
Lisa Mateo, are you filing this morning?
Yeah, but you know what? We won every lawsuit because we did a 4,000-page study. The feds approved it. It took 5 years to do the study. It takes about 5 minutes to figure out New York has a congestion problem if you stand in Midtown.
Right.
But what President Trump is going to do is, I'm not certain. There's a lot of Republican politicians who are against mass transit and who rail about this. President Trump is also a New Yorker who owns office buildings, and 90% of the people who work in his office buildings come on mass transit. So I'm optimistic that he will get it.
We are honored Janno Lieber, CEO of the MTA, with us today for this extended block here. We welcome all of you on Bloomberg Surveillance nationwide in your commute and on YouTube. Subscribe to Bloomberg Podcast, to say the least. I have talked to Mayor Adams not once but twice about a New Orleans experiment, I believe over in Europe, of free bus service for the poor. The congestion tax is about fancy people like Paul Sweeney in his ginormous car, or me being driven by the Bentley down Fifth Avenue. Forget about it. What do we do to help really needy people who need to commute from, I'm going to say, Rockaway Beach up to wherever?
Okay, well, let's just be real, because 95+% of those people you're talking about, low-income people who live in the boroughs, take transit. They don't drive because parking in Midtown is
Should we offer them free bus service?
But you know what we're offering? What we're offering is we have for the first time, the MTA, under Mayor Adams' leadership, has been pushing a fair fares program that cuts the price of transit in half for low-income people. And you know what, Tom, transit is one of the very few things that makes New York affordable. It's 15% the cost of owning a car. It's already a good deal at full price.
Right.
At half price, it's out of sight. And so I'm confident we're dealing with the concerns of that community as well as the broader goal.
What is the delta on going from, Danielle is all over me here. She and Michelle Kasky have done great work for Bloomberg on this, Daniel Moran. What has been the delta from $15 down to $9? How does that change the Janno Lieber world?
Okay, good question. Listen, Governor Hochul.
It's my only good one of the day, so stay with us.
Yeah. So Governor Hochul, after we were moving towards implementing in June, decided that she wanted to take away the sticker shock, and so she, after a pause, knocked the price down by 40%. So instead of $15 for
did she call you, or did you learn about it?
She called me. She called me. It was shortly before she announced it, and it certainly was a shock to the system for some of the folks who have been working on this. But in the end, it has worked. What it has done is it's message to the public that we are looking at an easy implementation, that she's worrying about affordability, but we're getting the benefits. Tom, you said, how does it affect the MTA? How does it affect me? It will take us a little longer to raise the statutorily required $15 billion, but we have enough work going on that we can continue to make progress on rebuilding the subway system. In the meantime, it's been a net positive.
We're going to be, one of the intentions for congestion pricing is to drive more of transit folks to the subways. How about safety of the subways? Where are we there? Because there's a concern is that you're well aware that post-pandemic maybe not.
Listen, the overall stats are positive. Last year we were actually 12.5% less crime than 2019, the last year before COVID. But there's no question that some of these high-profile incidents, terrible attacks, have gotten in people's heads and made the whole system feel less safe. And there's a little bit of disorder that's crept into the public space since COVID. There's no question about it. I say the criminal justice system has to do its job and make sure these people who do that kind of stuff, most of whom who have long rap sheets, are put away. There are very, very few of these folks, but they have an impact on people's sense of safety, and we need to deal with them in a way that protects the riders and the public.
First time I went down the stairs in a Tokyo subway, there were the guardrails or the walls or whatever. We put a man on the moon. This is New York City. You mentioned the shining light of LaGuardia, $19 billion on JFK as well. Can't we put up guardrails quickly in our subways?
You're absolutely right. The quickly part is the one challenge I would say we got.
Well, New York City quickly,
we put $1 billion in our new capital program. Since fare evasion and this whole phenomenon has definitely accelerated post-COVID, we put $1 billion in our new capital program for that. So we are going to start to replace all these turnstiles, which worked when I was a kid, but clearly are ineffective now in the era that we're living in. We got to replace them. You're absolutely right.
But are we going to put in walls to protect people at the edge of the subway?
Yeah.
Lisa Mateo and I are sitting at home with our offspring going, take the Uber. That's the reality, Janno.
Okay, so listen, we have started to put up barriers, chop, which is really literally these little half height walls along the platforms, and we're going to accelerate doing that. One complexity is those super high-tech barriers that you get in European train stations and the newer stuff literally are too heavy for the platforms that our 100-year-old system has. So we can't do that, but we're going to start to accelerate these barriers so that anybody can position themselves so they feel safe on a subway platform. We don't want people to feel otherwise.
So I know in conceiving of this plan here, there are a lot of exceptions for different people who would be exempt from this congestion pricing. For example, the Hampton Jitney is exempt, yet firefighters' personal vehicles to get them into the firehouses are not. That seems kind of odd, but I know there's trade-offs everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, the point is, there was an across the board, this was done by a panel that was studied, that there were 130 separate requests for exemptions. And what they said is what we're going to exempt is we're going to exempt disabled people, we're going to give a huge discount to low-income people, and we're going to make sure that buses, which are a form of mass transit, whether they're operated by the MTA or otherwise, are exempt. That's where you get something like the Hampton Jitney. Now, in fairness, Hampton Jitney has 50 people on it, and if those people drove, it would take up a lot of room. So it makes sense. We don't talk about personal vehicles. We're not going to choose who is special. The real goal here is to have people make rational choices. If they want to get their employer to pay them to drive in, that's fine. But that's not for the government to decide. The broad decision was what it was. But let's, today is really a historic day, and we ought to be focused on the fact that New York is back to leading, that we're doing what Mayor Bloomberg did in the old days, which is New York's a problem solver. We're in the problem-solving business. We're dealing with our problems. And government seems paralyzed in a lot of the United States. We are dealing with the realities of what it takes to be a 21st century city.
Daniel Moran is writing this up, and she's like, okay, we're leading the way. What's the next city to do this nationwide?
That's a good question. They all call me.
The door's locked over there. Danielle says you can't get out unless you answer the question.
Well, they all call me and they say and they ask for information because they're all taking a look at it.
Boston?
It could be because the key is we are so lucky because cities all over the United States have traffic problems like crazy, and it's crushing their economy and their development pattern and their appeal to employers. But only New York has this out-of-sight mass transit system. Maybe Boston, maybe Washington, maybe Chicago, because they have the alternative.
I'm cutting you some slack here. And folks, let me tell you, I'm not even part of this debate. I was below 57th Street once last year.
That's not happening.
I have no life. What can I went to Brooklyn a couple years ago. It was beautiful.
Come on over.
I thought it was Brooklyn, Massachusetts, and they said, no, it's Brooklyn, New York. Janno, let me cut to the chase here and the heart of the matter. Somebody once explained to me that New York is not London, we're not LA. You've got X number of bridges, X number of tunnels. It's a challenge here like no other challenge. Where's the bottleneck going to be with the congestion tax?
I think that the great thing is if you reduce traffic in general, there's less chance of bottlenecks across the board. That's the benefit, that even the people who have to drive or choose to drive are going to get a better experience, so their time is not wasted stuck in traffic. That's the goal. I don't know exactly where the bottleneck's going to be, but the goal is to have fewer of them.
So we're Wall Street, we're global Wall Street. Talk to us about this bond that's going to be issued. A, what is it, and when will you guys issue some bonds to raise capital to then invest back into the system?
Good question. So our CFO at the MTA, Kevin Willens, ran Muni Finance at Goldman for many years.
Okay, so
Kevin is when the governor dropped the toll by 40%, he took a hard look when that started to unfold at whether we could still raise the money that the law requires, $15 billion to be raised from the revenues. And the answer is yes, we can do it. It will take slightly different structure. It'll take a different length of time, but we're going to be able to do it probably in multiple bond offerings rather than a single one. Originally, they planned a single bond offering, $15 billion. Now, it's going to probably take a couple of years and a couple different offerings.
You've been more than generous with your time.
Yep.
I want to talk about the reality, and I'm speaking for the headquarters here, the investment Mr. Bloomberg has made. I should mention, folks, Mike Bloomberg, the former mayor of New York, and he is, of course, the owner of Bloomberg Radio, Bloomberg Television, and I think, does he sign your paycheck?
I think he
signs
does.
mine as well.
Yep.
Yeah. It's just simple. We go up 3rd Avenue and it's ruined. I got a bike lane, I got bus lanes, I got some kind of parking in the middle. Basically, we've taken 6-lane streets, 5-lane streets down to 2, and you're living it as well. I got an Amazon truck on the right and a FedEx truck on the left. Now everybody's going up Park Avenue because they can't get up 3rd Avenue. That's just my little soap opera.
Yeah.
How do we get rid of the parking issue? Peter Coy at the New York Times has been brilliant on this. How do we change parking so 3rd Avenue isn't a driveway?
Well, I mean, listen, these are issues that the city of New York is going to have to wrestle with. You talked about how good your experience was in Paris, and Paris has done a lot to make it easier for bikes and pedestrians and to take away a little room for cars. That is part of the strategy that's been effectively followed. But I'll say this. Thankfully, the city's getting rid of dining sheds, which took up a ton of room.
Dan Doctoroff was big on this.
Yeah, getting rid of dining sheds. You know, we love our restaurants. They're rocking and socking after COVID, but we don't need to give out free real estate in the middle of the street anymore because people can't go indoors.
This is not.
So that is one factor. But I'm for more the bike lanes and certainly the bus lanes. If we can put 50 people on a bus who would otherwise be driving 50 individual cars, it's a net positive for the city, even for the drivers. So we're going to keep focused on a streetscape that works. But it's still a work in progress, Tom. We're still learning, and coming out of COVID with the dining sheds, I think we got to make some progress.
Sweeney demands we got breaking news here. Can you solve the New York Giants and the Jets? Can you
John's a Giants fan.
I'm a Giants fan, and I stopped paying attention about 2 months ago.